Good evening, I'm not Davina McCall.
And I'm not Graham Norton.
But it's still Channel 4, so stand by for 90 minutes of drink, drugs, vomit, alien sex and pixie hats.
And more vomit.
For us, it's the quiet night in.
And for you, it's the Guitar Heroes Top 10.
More tea, Richard?
Thank you, Francis. Lovely.
Welcome to this program where you can hear guitar and a lot of other instruments play music, music and music.
Just basically plug the fucker in and make the sounds happen.
Since they found a way to attach it to the mains, the guitar has been the first instrument of rock. Tonight we salute the greatest practitioners of the noble art. But before we dive neck deep into chord-based chaos, some theory and a bit of history. The guitar's been around since Elizabethan times. Early axe maniac King Henry VIII just loved to finger his lute. But it wasn't until the 20th century that the guitar had its first heroes. Blues pioneers like Robert Johnson, who sold his soul to the devil, and B.B. King, who lost his heart to his guitar, which he called Lucille.
Almost lost my life trying to save my guitar.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock.
Once the power came on in the 50s, the kids, mainly boys, felt strange and pleasurable urges towards an instrument that had been, until then, well, a bit girly.
All the old guitars were female cymbals, and so that the singer is caressing this female guitar.
There's just something sort of romantic about it, and if you fall in love with the shape of a guitar and what it does and just all the aspects of it as an instrument, that's it, you're hooked then for life.
Now, the guitar lost its female shape, was put onto a strap so that it was played lower down over the crotch, so that the body of the guitar had now become a scrotum with an erect penis.
No, I'm not having that. There's a fucking plank of wood with 6 strings on. The guitar is the instrument of our time. There's no question about it. The guitar is a tool that I use when I work. It's as simple as that. To other people, it's like this fucking, whoa, you know, it's my axe, man.
Guitar will travel, sort of, you know, live with your guitar and, you know, eat, drink and sleep it and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. I think that's right.
Guitar Hero needs to have sex, virtuosity, needs to be loud, aggressive, and the ideal Guitar Hero is normally just a little bit naff into the bargain as well.
I could play Stairway to Heaven when I was 12. Jimmy Page didn't actually write it until he was 22.
To be an axe hero in your own head, you don't even need equipment, just the right hormonal makeup. But to be an R-chant, you have to be the real deal. And you have to want to be a guitar hero. And some people didn't.
Mark Knopfler, fabulous for going to sleep to. Superb guitarist. But why doesn't he just cane the son of a bitch?
But not even that guarantees inclusion. No, sheer speed isn't enough, and neither is sheer brilliance. While there are bonus points for influence and innovation, you also need to have enjoyed a long history of transatlantic chart success. Sorry, guys. So stand by for 90 minutes of noisy boys and their noisier toys. Are you ready to rock?
We must know what it sounds like. Go ahead and strum with your right hand finger. No. Beautiful. More of that. Thank you very much.
Right, now this is more like it. Time to get down to business. Although with Channel 4, our first guitar hero, he's got...
Simmer down.
He's got short hair.
I know. It's a bloody disgrace.
Last night, I sat down and tried to make a list of the truly great British bands of the 1980s, bands whose recording and influence would endure. After nearly an hour, I was staring at a sheet of paper with only one name on it.
I mean, they were the bollocks between 83 and 87, and there was not a band on the fucking planet that would touch them. And I still wish they were together now, really.
Why do you call yourself the Smiths?
We call ourselves the Smiths because you decided we were called the Smiths.
And I decided because it was the most ordinary name.
People were just waiting for something different. So really, the 80s guitar bands were just defined by R.E.M. and the Smiths. And the Smiths had a bona fide guitar hero.
When I got to about 7 or 8, I remember having this like little wooden thing, and I started to be watching TV and seeing electric guitars on the television. So I remember I painted it up awfully, and I stuck beer bottle tops so it looked like knobs, volume controls, and that was the first one I remember.
I'd been around local guitarists from bands that had made it in the 60s and the 70s, but I'd never heard anything like what he did.
Why do you, John, think you should have any door money at all? In fact, we've just stopped your door money. What do you say about that?
I think it'd be very unfair. I don't see why.
Ignoring advice from the future Lord Macdonald, our dole-sponging young axeman was about to make his contribution to society with a louche lyricist from Manchester's glamorous Stretford.
Joe encouraged me to approach Morrissey, just go and knock on his door and introduce myself, which I did. And then really pretty much from that moment on, bang, we were an item then.
They were so different as people. I think that's why the combination sort of worked.
Although the way they worked was a tad unconventional.
I would drop off a cassette through Morris's letterbox, and he would maybe come the next day or next time with his book and sing along for 5 minutes, usually only 1 or 2 takes. He said, I've done it now. And disappeared.
And then me and John would look at each other and go, right, we're on. And then I'd just start putting, like, you know, hundreds of guitars on it then, all the way through the night. We were like sort of postmodern, androgynous monkeys.
The first top 20 single was, according to the NME, perfect in its détente of tough and tender, and also praised Johnny's spring-heeled periphery riffery. Pretentious, moi.
All men have secrets and here is mine, so let it be known. We have been...
The song also established the band as style gurus.
I think it was what difference does it make on the biggest effect, because that's when he had his polo neck on and his red Gibson 355, and it was like, that's the look.
I used to spend most of my time, once I'd got the Smiths albums and the records I wanted, just sitting in front of the video, watching videos and listening to live tapes. That's the only romance I was getting at that time, that's for sure. But to be honest, that's all I needed, and that's all I wanted. And if I hadn't had that relationship with the group, then I know my life would be very different now.
Morrissey and Marr's anthems for misunderstood youth bestrode the 80s like a slightly sad colossus. Everyone had their favourites, including Johnny.
Panic I like just because of the sheer exuberance of it.
Burn down the disco, and the blessed DJ.
When He's Dead is one of my favourite songs that we did, because I went into redoing a guitar track, and I just was stood in this like little booth. The outside world didn't exist, and then when I finished it, I kind of like, looked round, and the rest of the band were like, whoa.
He was doing stuff that I still can't do. You know, created a style of his own. Jammy bastard.
The thing that I'm asked about most about the Smiths by guitar players is How Soon Is Now.
When How Soon Is Now happened, it was really strange. You know, what is this? How do you do that on a guitar?
Easy. Use a bit of tremolo, feed the riff through 4 twin amps, sample, loop, leave to simmer, and hey presto, another classic.
Pretty simple really, but it did the job.
But in 1987, after 5 years of non-stop touring and recording, it wasn't just the Queen that was dead. When Morrissey offered to spank anyone with a wet plimsoll who said the Smiths were splitting, he obviously wasn't counting on Johnny.
It was building up for a long time. You know, it wasn't just one night and it wasn't just 1 week. It built up over quite a few months.
And the ending didn't come for another 10 years when drummer Mike Joyce took Johnny and Morrissey to court to claim back some performance and recording royalties he'd been squeezed out of in the original contract.
It was a bit surreal being in a courtroom, you know, the 4 of us in a courtroom, arguing over whether events took place or whether they didn't, and it was just really bizarre. It was like going through a messy divorce sort of thing.
The judge described Morrissey as devious, truculent and unreliable. He said Johnny was more reasonable, but still ordered them to pay up to the tune of over £1 million, plus costs.
Can we talk about the rest of my career now, please? It will be in the programme, won't it?
Johnny soon became known as Britain's most famous session musician, with the likes of Brian Ferry and the Pretenders, much to the irritation of the UK music press.
They assumed that I wasn't committed and that I was maybe being a bit of dilettante, and just, you know, I just get out of my limo and I go, hi Chrissy Hind or hi Matt Johnson, and we bust out the champagne and I play a few licks and then I'm off. thought that isn't the way it works.
People don't realise he was in the almost as long as he was in the Smiths. You know, I mean, he made a couple of albums, a couple of long-form videos, world tour, a couple of EPs. It was quite a productive period.
So productive, Johnny even started up his own band with New Order's Bernard Sumner, and even started using, well, synthesizers.
When Johnny got involved in a lot of electronic music, I said to him I felt that he should stick to the guitar. I mean, he's the best guitarist in the country, and that's what people love him for. I felt personally he made a mistake by getting into synths and samplers and drum machines.
I think we have quite a distinctive sound, and I think we've done stuff in hindsight that couldn't possibly be New Order, and obviously couldn't be the Smiths.
Hey, Johnny.
And in his new band, The Healers, he's even taken the shine to a bit of lead vocals.
Someone who's been like on the left of the stage for so long, suddenly going up to the microphone and singing. The effect is like a B-movie where in the last scene the little child who can't speak all the way through the film goes, "Mama." Everyone goes, "My God, he can speak."
What this program needs is some rock. And the man who put the heavy into metal.
Heavy metal and Axe go together like Horseman and Apocalypse. It's produced the disturbingly warted forefathers of thrash. And the blood-curdling, brummy big brothers of grunge. But who was the first alchemist to turn 6 bass strings into the purest metal?
Great guitarist, great talent, very moody and very unpredictable.
Selfish guitar hero, the one who'd bill himself over the vocalist.
Stunning player, fabulous sound, which is what I think put him apart from a lot of other players.
And quite honestly, no one knows what his next move might be.
In the early 70s, really the guitarist hero, and crafted really what we'd see as heavy metal.
The arsiest man in rock learned his 6-string single-mindedness at an early age.
My father bought me this guitar. I think he was a little bit tired of me taking up things and then dropping them 5 minutes later, so he said, if you don't learn this guitar, I will break it over your head.
Not surprisingly, Ritchie took to wearing armour and got his first break playing with professional loony, Screaming Lord Sutch.
We had this coffin on stage, and he came out of the coffin and turned into Dracula. And all I was thinking was, this man is driving me home tonight. This guy is nuts.
Once home safely, Ritchie joined his own band, Deep Purple. They axed their singer after Ritchie heard the future lead vocalist of Led Zeppelin.
I met Robert Plant, and the man was phenomenal. And I knew that we couldn't compete with that unless we changed our singer to someone who could scream like he could.
From Screaming Lord Sutch to Screaming Deep Purple.
These guys had known each other for 2 or 3 years already, so I learned a few songs that they knew. And I cried. I mean, I literally had tears rolling down my face the first night at the Speakeasy. I thought, this is it. This is it. This is what I've been looking for.
Initially, there were no hassle, no hang-up. Everybody was very happy. You know, the little things over the course of a couple of years become big things. So. Ritchie made it very, very hard for Ian to keep on working without feeling bummed out about it, you know.
The two were always crossing swords, and the other 3 members of the band would either try and keep them apart or cower in the corner.
You take a bunch of 5 guys off a council estate and put a load of money in their pockets and inflate their egos, and pretty soon you're going to have, hello, dear, where did you come from?
At the height of their powers, a chasm opened in Deep Purple. Gillan and bass player Roger Glover fell in. Ritchie got a new lineup together. But the revolving door never really stopped spinning.
When I think that somebody's not doing their job or I disagree with somebody, I won't analyze the situation and explain it to them. I'd rather just go off and sulk.
Ritchie sulked his way out of Purple after one more album and formed the modestly titled Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow.
I saw him go through a succession of people who wanted more from him than he was willing to give, and those people were just about banished forever from his life, so I took it very, very slowly.
But the musical chairs just kept going.
Ritchie never said to me, "You're not in this band anymore." Ritchie never said anything. I never talked to him again after that moment.
Not even a huge hit could stem the flow.
They wanted me to go back, but I didn't go back. But their story is that they fired me, which is not the real one.
Was this man ever going to be satisfied?
I have no sour grapes about it. I figure that's life, and that's the way people are. You know, when they get like that, when their lives are at stake, it's going to be you, not them. And they needed a sacrificial lamb, and that was me.
The lure of a £2 million payday breathed new life into the old dogs in the mid-80s. Purple reformed, and Ritchie returned to metal's most famous riff. Then quit again. Twice.
A lot of people have gone through Rainbow and Purple that are great friends. But if the music isn't right, I have to let them go and go on to somebody that I think has more musical knowledge about the way I want to go. When I met Frank Sinatra, he said to me, quite sincerely, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "What?" And that was it. I realized then that it was time to move on, to get into something new. And this is when I took up the medieval approach, because Frank wasn't around then.
He's Blackmore, she's Knight. Together they're Blackmore's Knight, and they don't rock.
I just want to live in a musical little roundabout. I want to be at the bottom of my garden, living with fairies, playing the music that is very dear to me.
Time to unplug for a couple of minutes. But first, a tribute to the greatest film ever made.
Is that the one with Clint Eastwood and the monkey?
No. Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap.
Oh, don't touch it. I wasn't going to touch it. No, don't touch it.
I was just pointing at it.
Well, don't point even.
I don't even look at it, man. Don't even look at it.
The numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
My amplifier goes up to 12, so I have no grievance with that.
Yeah. My solos are my trademark.
I was privy enough to see the premiere of it in Westwood, and everybody was in the audience. I mean, you know, Ronnie Dio and Blackmore and Coverdale and you name it, we were all there, and nobody was laughing.
It was very close to what was going on in those days. And I heard there were certain bands that took offense to it.
Hello there. Now it's time to head for the border.
Ah, Mexico, sombreros, tequila and Speedy Gonzales.
And beer with fruit in the top.
And an extraterrestrial guitar player.
What is this place?
What are you doing to me? Can't you speak? Who are you?
I come from the light. I'm just visiting this planet.
In actual fact, this self-confessed alien was a Mexican and learned his craft in mariachi bands on the strip joints of Tijuana. before moving to San Francisco and being spotted by the boss of Columbia Records.
I went up there, I saw the Santana Band, and they became about the third artist that I ever signed in my life.
I quickly realized after moving in with these guys that this was no hippie love scene. We were talking about a Mexican, a Nicaraguan, a Puerto Rican, a militant black, and Greg Raleigh and I from the suburbs. So this was like a street gang, but the weapon was music.
In 1969, the hairy multicultural militia marched on Woodstock.
Santana was a perfect band for that festival. It was a tribe, and we were playing tribal music. A lot of drugs, a lot of people really high. The highways did close down. It just turned into something almost like a mating call or something. Everybody came. The sense there was, this is it, we've arrived. We've showed the world that we are a force to contend with.
Santana were overnight sensations. Their debut album became one of the soundtracks to the Summer of Love. No one else sounded like Carlos Santana.
They took all the drugs that were current at the time. Carlos himself did a lot of acid and mescaline, and the playing was very free, and it was very spiritual. Whenever you hear Carlos talk, he's a very spiritually obsessed person.
One note should embody 5 things, which is what you are. Soul, heart, mind, body, and your cojones, your vitals. One note.
That's balls to you and me.
If you could do that with every note, Eric Clapton's going to listen. Jimi Hendrix is going to listen, no matter where they are. They're going to say, man, because if you don't feel it, why the hell should anybody else?
The second album's rude cover and monster hit single entertained bearded men the world over.
He's always been one of my favourite guitarists, although his range maybe is not that spectacular. I like his playing very much, simply because to me, at any rate, it's so expressive.
But success opened up too many doors of perception.
Most bands split up because of musical differences. Really, the Santana band broke up because of chemical differences. They were all doing different drugs.
The biggest showdown came between Carlos and the percussionist, Michael Carabello.
It was a shootout at the OK Corral. But Carlos wanted Carabello out of the band. And I said, you know, you can't do that. It's not your band. And he said, not yet.
Soon enough, Carlos did have control, but newfound friends in spiritual places and an ill-advised flirtation with cricket-based fashion led to over a decade in the chart wilderness. But while most rockers would turn to hard drugs or the bottle, Carlos found salvation in outer space with an angel called Metatron. You can't make this up.
He stands by that story of, you know, Metatron, the angel coming to him and saying that it's time for you to make music to rearrange the cells in people's bodies.
By the late 90s, it was time for Santana to phone a friend.
He wanted to reunite together, and so we did. And this game plan for what became Supernatural was then followed pretty much to the letter.
My wife and I knew intuitively that creating this CD, Supernatural, had the capacity to create a spiritual virus that's going to spread.
Well, I hear you whisper and the words melt everyone, but you stay so cool.
We knew that creating music a certain kind of way, it would dismantle the homicide, suicide, genocide that's happening all over the world.
It was one of the most remarkable comebacks in rock history. Suddenly, the hippest of the hip were falling over each other to play with Santana.
It was just incredible to see the way that generation after generation, Carlos still stays the same. You know, it just appeals to everybody.
Everybody, including the Grammys, who gave him a record equaling 9 awards. But Carlos stayed cool.
He's very, believe it or not, non-commercial kind of guy. He's turned down the Pope. He's turned down Castro. He's turned down Clinton 4 times. You can't buy him.
And the mustachioed maestro's secret?
Spiritual orgasm. It's what people need to have.
Your heart real, or else forget about it.
For some reason, our next hero has always played under an assumed name.
As if Dave Evans wasn't glamorous enough.
The symbol of this spirit still carrying on in the Irish people is the U2 with their messages as they travel the world.
U2 weren't always spiritual role models and all-conquering rock heroes. They started out practicing in their school classroom and conning local TV producers.
And we played him 2 Ramones songs. And he said, they're great songs. Did you write those? And we said, yep. And he said, that's very good. I think I will put you on the TV.
U2.
U2 were not very good at the beginning. The rhythm section was lumpy. The singer was crap. But the guitarist had a certain something. He had this mercury sound.
Right from at the age of 17, bang, he just made up his mind, you know, wanted to be best guitarist in the world.
Edge had the magic. And later on, they got it.
The rock band of 1978. They won the Harp Lager Evening Press Contest for such a band. So, well done, lads.
I come from the same road as Bono, so we were just going, this is it. Music is where it's the be-all and end-all. It was the way out of what was a sort of a going-nowhere life.
We're going up!
You can sum up his whole guitar playing is based on his calmness as a person. Bono will be running around like a headless chicken, and Edge will be this serene person, and he plays the guitar with brush strokes.
All the other punk groups were playing chords, and he was playing single notes, and I thought that was very unusual, and it certainly was at that time. And he had the nerve to play a Gibson Explorer, which was a very flashy instrument, and it needed quite a lot of bottle.
U2's thing from the word go was like, as long as it had an attitude, it was okay. That was our thing.
By the mid-80s, that attitude was starting to cause a few waves. The two were getting a bit political and a bit sweary.
You know, everyone was pushing us to release that song. Even though I think one of the radio pluggers did suggest we might try and drop the bloody if we could.
Sunday, bloody Sunday. What a great... It really encapsulates the frustration of a Sunday, doesn't it? You wake up in the morning, you've got to read all the Sunday papers, the kids are running round, you've got to mow the lawn, wash the car, and you think, Sunday, bloody Sunday.
It was the highlight of the concert that cemented their reputation in the States. Soon, they were the biggest band in the world.
Making the Joshua Tree, we kind of hit our stride.
15 million albums later, U2 could choose what they wanted to play and who they wanted to play it with.
The rhythm section consists of 4 people. Edge is all 4. And more.
After delving into the archives, Edge & Co. went to Berlin and came up with something completely different.
Welcome to Zoo TV.
The Gulf War was on. You felt like an ambulance chaser, you know. It had stopped being just the news. It was now just another form of entertainment. The first step was deciding to work with TV screens and television as an idea. And then it was really like the floodgates opened.
And they even wrote a studio album on the road.
I remember the Acton Baby tour as being punctuated by these midnight recording sessions when we'd fly back to Dublin, and Edge would go into the studio And he really produced that album, and his personality seems to me to be all over it.
Don't whisper, don't talk, don't run. If you can walk, don't cheat, compete, don't miss the one.
And then, believe it or not, things got really bonkers.
The whole Pop Mart thing was like somebody had to stare down the tap, you know what I mean? Somebody had to out Spinal Tap.
And what could be more Derek Smalls than a giant metal lemon?
A lot of people really got it. Some people didn't. And I think that is actually kind of the story of U2.
25 years in, and U2 are back with a vengeance.
They don't want to be seen by their children as a joke, and they don't want to be seen by the rest of the world as boring old farts. They want to be seen as contemporary and meaningful of this moment.
Two final things. First, why the Edge?
I'll give you a hint. All the names have got to do with the physicality and the personality of the people.
I think it's to do with the chin.
And finally, the family secret.
It's like a sort of a mutant finger, and Edge's younger brother has one too. So I have a theory that they can get to places on the fretboard that other people can't.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the secret, you know. Could be.
Right, it's time for a break. And for all you youngsters out there...
Remember, it's never too early to pick up an axe.
Right.
A quiet West Midlands inn some 2 decades ago, but with an extraordinary cabaret. His name was, and probably still is, Thomas McRocklin. No, honest. These scenes of teenage acts sent rooms of sweaty men mad with rock and made Thomas a minor celebrity. Until bedtime. Oh, Dad, just another 5 minutes.
Welcome back. And next up, the Modfather, an angry young axeman who didn't die before he got old.
But he still had a very long face. I want to sit there.
Yeah.
Someone told me the other day that he plays in a glass box now, because he's deaf.
What's your name?
Pete.
Pete.
Townsend, yeah.
Pete, and where are you from, Pete?
London.
It's like a phone booth, but you can't swing his arms around it. Maybe he puts his arms out of the booth to swing it round, and brings it back in again.
Like the old indicators on the cars.
They weren't music to everyone's ears, but they were one of the biggest bands of their generation, with a lead guitarist who wrote songs that young people in this country could actually relate to.
Pete Townsend is probably the best all-round guitar player stroke songwriter that there is.
One of the most wonderful things really about The Who is that it was British to the core. The lyrics related to us, no sort of Americanisms in there at all. It was all British.
The large-nosed dandy was the rebellious son of a big band musician and formed his own group in West London in the early 60s.
I was some little gawky adolescent with a big nose. You know, I had no idea that I could become a world-class rock star. In 1963, 64, you know, the kids in the audience who used to look up at the stage, they'd look at Roger and they didn't like him very much because he was probably shagging their girlfriend. You know, when they looked at me, they thought, well, I like him. He's as funny looking as I am, and he talks about what I feel.
Pictures of Lily made my life so wonderful.
If you go back in Who history, you find songs like Pictures of Lily about boys masturbating, which I wrote simply because I knew that it would be a bit controversial.
I've heard a lot about you and the rest of the group taking drugs, Pete. Does this mean you're usually blocked up when you're actually on stage?
No, but it means we're blocked up all the time, you know.
Under the influence or not, controversy was never far away, as Pete regularly gave Axe and Amp a damn good thrashing.
I'd known his father for years because I played with his father in the big bands, and we both thought the kid had gone stark raving mad. But after a while, we both agreed that it was a new form of showmanship.
Showmanship to some, to others, anger.
I don't know why Townsend was angry. Maybe it was because he had a great big hooter and he felt that he wasn't attractive to girls or whatever, and everyone was looking at Daltrey.
It's much more to do with that pent-up feeling of, you know, you're forgetting about me as the person, all I'm going through, and it's just focused on the guitar. And if I break my guitar, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? How are you going to feel about me now?
I didn't want them to smash their instruments up at all. I wanted them to bloody well keep going till they dropped, which they frequently did, and then smash the instruments up.
Whatever the fury was about, Pete produced classic after classic and 2 hit films, Tommy and Quadrophenia, inspired by, gasp, concept albums.
A lot of people find me irritating. Why can't you just write an album full of songs? Well, I do. It's just that, you know, what inspires me to write an album full of songs is a bigger idea.
By 1975, The Who were one of the biggest bands in the world, and according to the Guinness Book of Records, the loudest. But this being rock and roll, there was a problem. And this being rock and roll, the problem was the drummer. He wasn't called Moon the Loon for nothing.
Keith Moon was getting ill and, you know, literally coming apart because of his drinking and drug abuse. And he was the first one in the band that started to show signs that, you know, hey, this rock and roll lifestyle, you don't live forever, however big and strong you say you are.
And sure enough, Moon followed the laws of rock drumming to the letter.
Pete always seemed to handle the drugs quite well until Mooney died, and then I think he got into quite a bad phase and the music suffered.
Townsend went solo for a while and gave one of his most memorable performances at the Tory Party Conference of 1984.
I smoked heroin once, alone, quite calmly, in the middle of the day. I was not sick. I felt wonderful. I'm a fast learner. I was addicted.
Pete cleaned up, and so did The Who. While Townsend has dabbled in various solo projects, publishing and musicals, his band got a new drummer and have been splitting up, reforming and paying farewell tours for nearly 20 years now. And although the hits dried up, guess what? They even became trendy again.
We were associated with the mod revival of retro that happened in the 96-97, which was sparked off by, to some extent, Oasis, but particularly Blur, using the leading actor from the Quadrophenia film in one of their videos.
And while the shelf life of the likes of Blur and Oasis seem uncertain, it looks like The Who will go on forever, or at least as long as Pete wants them to.
I don't want to go out there and look like a mug, I suppose, you know, and if The Who start to look like some horrible kind of tacky 70s band, you know, then I will back off.
Our next term proves that guitar heroes can have O-levels.
Yes, kids, but studying doesn't mean that you can't rock.
It does cut into your type with drink, drugs and loose women, though.
All of which are wrong, obviously.
I always know when Brian has put a bit on somebody else's record. You know, even if he hasn't told me, I know. I know it's this guitar.
Brian May was very fortunate in that he had a very nice and kind dad who'd got an old mahogany toilet seat.
It came from a part of an old fireplace.
We made it out of shoe boxes and shoes.
So it's all made from strange objects, piece of junk really. A knitting needle.
You made the knobs.
Yes. Oh yes, a piece of shelf edging.
And he'd fashioned a guitar, which they called something like the Red Meanie. Not only that, Brian played the guitar with a sixpence. And this was the band to watch in '74.
He had sort of long, curly hair, which I thought was very good. That's a plus. He was obviously very articulate and intelligent.
Armed with rock's most famous DIY guitar and a degree in astrophysics, Brian forsook the telescope for the axe and some equally brainy bandmates. Taylor, Imperial College, Drums and Biology. Deacon, bass and Bachelor of Science first class. And when the first singer didn't work out, they looked to a Zanzibar-born design student for inspiration.
Freddie's already been to our gigs and gone, yeah, you're great, but you should do this and you do that. And we thought he was like, all talk, I suppose. And Fred goes, well, I can sing for you. You can sing. Turned out he could.
Queen were born, a great big glam prog panto. To begin with, not many people understood them or their music.
Everyone said, disc jockeys are not going to play this because it takes too long to happen. So as 70s arrived, we decided we would put the kitchen sink in, all of it, in the first 8 bars. And if you listen to it, you'll know exactly what I mean. It did little, the whole Armageddon.
The kitchen sink approach produced their first hit and a lashing from the critics.
And I thought, I don't think we're going to get on with these people. I remember having that feeling, and sure enough, we come along and they hate us from the beginning.
Is this the real life?
Their response? Write a 7-minute rock opera, release it as a single, then get a leg up from a friend.
I guess you have to mention Kenny Everett.
We gave him a copy, officially to listen to, but he was winking as we gave it to him. He played the song and partial parts of the song, I think like 14 times over the course of the weekend. Of course, by the time it got to Monday, the kids were going to the record stores and wanting to buy the single.
Kenny's teasing and some newfangled thing called a promotional video took Queen to #1 for 9 weeks. And while Freddie had Galileo fandangoing with Beelzebub, Brian came up with one of the rockingest moments in, well, rock.
I made sure that there was a suitable bed for the solo, because I could kind of hear the solo in my head as a tune. And obviously the heavy part, the bit that you headbang to in your van,
Bohemian Rhapsody marked the start of a decade of unremitting success. There were plenty of costume changes, but the riffs remained the same, as Queen became market leaders in aristocratic rock excess. Brian got an ulcer, got better, became a tax exile, came home again, and by the time Bob Geldof rang up about something called Live Aid, was one of Britain's highest paid executives.
Inside us, we're wondering who we are, we're wondering if Queen is this huge thing that we've built up, this huge organisation, and can we actually pull it off? It gave us the confidence to realise that actually, even without the extravaganza, we were still us and we could still move people. So it was a great thing for us.
Post Live Aid, everyone loved Queen again. But the final date of their 1986 world tour in Nebworth was to be their last, though the really bad news didn't come for another 4 years.
The music world has been paying tribute to Freddie Mercury, the lead singer with the rock group Queen. He died last night, just 24 hours after saying he had AIDS.
Good evening, Wembley and the world!
Getting up on stage with him, that was pretty memorable.
And Brian's axe duet with his hero-worshipping hair-alike wasn't his only flirtation with the doppelganger effect. Before and after Freddie's death, Brian added his unique sound to his now wife's solo project and launched his own solo career on the back of a car ad. But there was still another #1 in the offing.
We were looking for an anthemic rock song, that we could kind of five up.
They said, can we sample your guitar and put it on the record? And I said, well, if you're going to sample my guitar, why don't I play?
And the hair remains the same.
I think I'm blind to fashion, to be honest. I've never been fashionable and I never will. I'm just me.
Francis, I'm a bit worried. You know me, I'm a modern sort of a bloke. And there are no girls in this chart. Why?
That's a good question, that. So we asked 2 leading academics.
If you asked anybody who with a modicum of interest in rock to draw up a list of lead guitarists, the likelihood of it being women is slim.
Girls are shit at playing guitar.
If one looks at the family tree of rock, you get that emphasis on the male body, on the pelvis, and the guitar as becoming an extension of the male body. So do they actually endow it with a sort of rock chick identity?
You can't play guitar if you've got long fucking nails, can you?
If it's natural to hold it low, well then one of your boobs is likely to sort of get stuck over the top, or if you're premenstrual, it's not that comfy. So where do you hold it? And then when you actually play, it's a male audience, you're likely to get the old accolade of get your tits out.
They're good at polishing guitars, I have to say. But as for playing them,
And next up, the leader of a 6-legged guitar machine.
And like his eyes, he's at number 4.
Lady Lewisham, what do you think about our teenagers?
I think they're splendid. I'm always very bored with people who say, oh, young people aren't what they were in my day.
So who were the apples of Lady Lewisham's aristocratic eye?
We were the Sex Pistols of 1958.
We played in coffee bars, singing and playing guitars, and then we formed several groups.
In 1958, Geordie guitarist Brian Rankin met Harry Webb's manager in a club in swinging Soho. By then, of course, he was Hank, and Harry was Cliff.
He said to Hank, I've got this singer called Cliff Richard, and we're going to do this tour, and I need a lead guitar player. Would you be interested in, and Hank said, well, I'll do it if my mate can come along.
We got on the bus and we went off to where he lived in a council house with his parents.
And we just jammed together, and it was obvious. We gelled as people, we gelled musically. They liked doing what I liked doing, and it was a go from the start.
They started out as the Drifters, but the name was already taken. By the time they were rocking the Royals, Hank and the boys had gone all dark and mysterious.
We went through every name you could think of, the Zephyrs, the Zodiacs, and I suddenly said Shadows.
Wherever we went, crowds would be there. And you have to remember, this is pre-Beatles. Everyone thinks that sort of thing happened with the Beatles. Well, I'm really sorry, but it did. It started with us.
So Cliff had all these women screaming and shouting, but all the guys wanted to be in the shadows. The guys were wearing horn-rimmed glasses, obviously no glass in them, because they wanted to be like Hank.
I saw Hank, and I've got to get his autograph, and I chased after him. And he just kept running, and I just kept running, and it was just this strange thing where the world seemed to fade away, and we were just, the two of us, just running. And I was totally non-threatening. I was just a little kid, but he eventually stopped and went, oh, all right, and he gave me his autograph.
Soon, Hank had even more axe appeal.
Cliff said, I want to buy a really good guitar, so we thought, well, Buddy Holly uses a guitar like this. We found out it was a Fender Stratocaster.
I'd already got a pink jacket that I'd sort of designed for myself, and the pink guitar seemed to be the right thing. And so I think I was the first person to bring a Strat into the country.
In those days, you couldn't buy new American instruments. There was an import ban. You had to order them direct from the States, which we did.
We opened it up and laid it on the floor and stood gazing at it. We'd only ever seen this in pictures.
It was just wonderful. Hank picked it up, and obviously the fretboard, the whole design of the guitar suited his play. And he created the Shadows sound on that guitar.
Hank's career, my career, the last 42 years was built on this.
Along with some nifty choreography and a guitar classic.
One record
It changed the world, really, for all guitar players. We were backing Cliff on his records, Cliff and the Shadows, but we then had a separate career as the Shadows making monster hits.
It wasn't long before Hank's matinee idol looks led him to the big screen, and pretty soon he was even on the box.
Oh, Horatio, how could I leave you when you're still in the middle of a bottle?
Eh? Oh, no, that's not bottle, that's battle.
But in 1968, Hank was deserted by his own Shadow.
And I left, actually, because I was with Olivia Newton-John at the time and just wanted to spend more time. We'd had a solid 10 years. And I thought we'd done everything that, a pop group could do.
Well, not exactly everything.
Let me be the one who's loving you tonight.
Bruce and Olivia split. Eurovision came calling, and the Shads reformed.
Hold you tight, I knew it.
They came second.
I'll even bring along a magic moon.
It was 1977, the height of punk. The Shads record label decided it was never mind the bollocks. Here's the Specs Pistols.
We, quite honestly, couldn't see what all the fuss was about. We thought, who's going to buy this now, 1977?
EMI presents the unforgettable guitar music of The Shadows.
It did about 1.25 million albums in Britain, plus what it did abroad. And it was #1 for 6 weeks.
Apache.
We did a tour called the 20 Golden Dates, just to back up the album.
FBI.
Talked to some young guys about who were into punk music, and we said, why are you here at our concert?
Foot Tapper.
And they said, well, because your music is very economic. You know, it's not unlike the punk stuff with like 2 guitars, bass and drums. And to us, you're like the original punks in the music because it's got that very clear, pure economic sound.
The Shadows Guitar Greats. 20 great tracks for £3.35.
And punk wasn't the only radical musical form to see the guiding light of Hank.
The B-boys would come to the party. They'll stand on the side, the breakers, and they would just, you're doing your thing, you're throwing on your joints, but they're just waiting for that moment that you just break out with some Apache.
Apache was the national anthem of hip-hop.
So there you go. The godfather of gob, the most sampled riff in rap. And after inventing punk and hip-hop, Hank became a Jehovah's Witness and moved to Australia. But guess what? He still sounds exactly the same as he did 40 years ago, and he's still packing them in.
People tend to laugh at him as the great bespectacled nerd of British guitar music. But he spawned, generations of players who wanted to sound like Hank to the extent that there are a number of equipment manufacturers in the UK who are getting by pretty much building equipment that lets you sound like Hank Marvin as a guitarist.
Wow, what a terrific group.
Yes, they always play at the Swinging Star. You see, they're way out.
And from a clean-cut Hank to a man who dabbled in all sorts of this and that, and the other, he wasn't the anti-Messiah, he was a very naughty boy.
Here is a song called Mama, what is it? Mama don't want me to play any skiffle? No. No more.
Well, Mama don't allow no skiffle down here. Oh, no, she don't. Mama don't allow no skiffle down in here.
What are your two names? Yours is?
James Page and...
David Haskell. What are you going to do when you leave school? Take up skiffle?
No, I want to do, biological research.
Young James Page's biological research on himself and others became the stuff of legend, as did his rather heavier brand of skiffle.
You need cooling, baby, I'm not cooling.
Stardom didn't happen overnight. Jimmy learned his rock as a session musician, playing with the hardest names in pop.
Artists like, how should we put it, like the Petula Clarks and the Tom Joneses. Boy, I did a lot.
After following Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck through 60s supergroup The Yardbirds, Jimmy formed his own band. They were called the New Yardbirds, until drum lunatic Keith Moon of The Who told them how he thought they'd go down.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Led Zeppelin to you.
German toff Baroness von Zeppelin was so flattered by the use of her family name that she paid the band a visit during a TV performance in Denmark.
They took her out into the studio to show her around, you see, and suddenly she saw the first album cover that says the Zeppelin crashing in place. There was this almighty shrieking, and she came back in threatening to have the lawyers stop the show, and all of this was going on right to the point of transmission.
Jimmy Page, with all his bum notes all over the albums, we never bothered trying tidying them up.
Yeah, but he did have his violin.
I'd never seen anything like that before, let alone heard what was being done on it.
He instigated, death music. Watch out, here I come. And whilst I'm killing you, you're going to love me. Something to be said for that.
Basically, if you want to learn to play heavy metal, you listen to Led Zeppelin, and there's the vocabulary. It's all there.
It was the riffs that you wish you'd have thought of because they're so obvious. It's just sitting there all the time, but no one else had come up with it. Just pull them out of the air. These are the riffs we should be doing.
Soon they were the biggest band on the planet and acting like it. It was excess all areas. Limos, private planes, and available young ladies at the drop of a wizard hat.
The whole point about Led Zeppelin is they built up a kind of mythology, and there was a sexual mythology as part of that. So the whole story of they're having a groupie and abusing her with a shark, which more or less happened, has become part of that mythology. It didn't actually involve the band, but it came to epitomise them.
The Led Zepp Novelty Angling Club did everything on a grand scale, and musical maestro Jimmy was about to come up with a song as huge and luxurious as his velvet loon pants.
I'd been going on about, doing a building song. We should really do a song that builds. About a week before Page, goes, well, I think I might have something a bit like that. Little did I know.
I've worked on it for quite a while, on and off. I was putting all these different sections together and putting them in what I considered was the right order before I even presented it to the band.
There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven.
The double neck was for live use only.
It's curious because a lot of people think that I actually recorded it on the double neck, so set that one straight.
The song itself caused even more of a stir. Jimmy's fascination with the occult and the writings of self-proclaimed Satanist Aleister Crowley led some to look for spooky hidden messages. They were American.
I've listened to several songs that have a technique which is termed backward masking. One in particular is Led Zeppelin's song, Stairway to Heaven. It's under a great deal of controversy right now.
Because we know all this stuff with Aleister Crowley and all the magic books. You feel all these things coming in, and there was a sort of aspiration towards more than just being a heavy rock band. Some of it's ludicrous, but you can get into it.
The band split in 1980 when vodka and vomit got the better of drummer John Bonham. So, what could possibly be next for the six-string magician? A man who many believed was actually, literally, in league with Beelzebub.
Jimmy had been my neighbour for a very long time, next door to where we are sitting, but I never saw him. And what happened was, when we were doing Death Wish 2, all I could think of was Jimmy Page, so I rang the house, and Jimmy Page got to do the music. And I must say, when the music came, it was spectacularly good.
And it wasn't to be Jimmy's last venture onto the silver screen.
My collaboration with Jimmy Page came about when I had to do this soundtrack for the Godzilla. I called them, and they was like, we'll kick it. We with the idea, and that kind of shocked everybody. Come with me. Come with me.
Jimmy dragged the classic riff out of the closet and had his biggest ever hit. And the Darth Vader of Guitar Heroes is still going strong, recording and performing with the likes of Puffy, old Zeppelin teammate Robert Plant, and most recently, skinny Yank rockers the Black Crowes. Classic rock's gain has been biological research's loss.
It's time for a middle eight, and we'll be back after this guitar break.
Some people think our number 2 guitar hero is God.
Others think he's just good. Either way, he's pretty handy, if a little slow.
To me, he's a genius. He had me doing things that is hard for my lady to get me to do. He know how to get me to do stuff.
In the beginning of your career, any particular influence?
Yeah. Personally, from my own style, I was influenced very much, most of all by B.B. King.
This is the man who could wrap B.B. King round his own plectrum. From the deep south of the Surrey Badlands, this nation's greatest bluesman looks nothing like him.
And I walking down the hall, man, and I heard this guitar crying like a baby. And I said, "Spook." And I opened the door, man, and there wasn't no black person. There was a Clapton sitting on the table, man. He was playing the crap out that guitar, man. And so anyway, man, that's the first time I met him.
Fresh-faced Eric started out with R&B legends the Yardbirds, but they weren't purist enough for the Lord Snooty of the blues. So he moved on, establishing an enormous underground following and a bizarre graffiti campaign, which at least explains the flowing beard. Now, this looks like Eric Clapton.
I never accepted the fact that I was the best guitar player in the world. I always wanted to be the best guitar player in the world. But that's an ideal, and I accept it as an ideal.
His pursuit of the ideal saw Clapton form Britain's first supergroup, a blues version of the Hair Bear Bunch.
Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker making up together the Cream, and they have come back from England and America. Big successful tour, new LP on the way, and let's have a bit of Strange Brew.
Killing what's inside of you. She's a witch of trouble in electric blue. In her own bad mind, she's in love with you.
I think with Cream, basically, it was a jazz band, but we didn't tell Eric. From the first few notes with Eric, it was pretty obvious that he was kind of ahead of everybody in a big way, very serious player.
Cream's strange brew of future car ad soundtracks and year-long guitar solos made them one of the biggest bands in the world. But it wasn't enough for restless Eric. Cream split in 1968, and Clapton spent the early 70s trying to find the ideal partner on and off stage.
I was falling in love with Patty Harrison. It seemed like it was an impossible quest. I mean, you don't fall in love with the wife of a Beatle. It's the last thing you do, especially in the late 60s or the early 70s. I mean, it's just not, it's not good form if you want to survive, you know.
After several years of careful courtship, Patty couldn't resist Eric any longer. And as it turned out, George didn't get shirty either.
There was no deception. I came clean straight away to him, in fact, almost before her.
Honesty was the best policy. Clapton and Harrison remained friends, and Eric wrote some soppy songs for Patty. Ah.
It's late in the evening.
But years of unrequited love took their toll. Eric had become addicted to more than just love.
I helped him drink those bottles of brandy. I helped him do all that stuff. I found a kindred spirit in him, actually.
He got better, though.
He fancied himself as a character in a novel who was lost, and that's what happened. He got into heroin, and then there came a point when he wanted to be another character, and he moved on.
Eric seems to me a guy that is, all through his life, has gone to the edge, and he's looked over, and he's come back. You know, he's always pushed himself to the edge of that particular thing. whether it be heroin, whether it be drink, whether it be anything.
In the end, Eric was saved by the affair that wrecked his marriage to Patty, and more precisely, the son he had with Italian starlet Laurie Del Santo, Connor.
In a sense, I was lucky to have him, because he got me sober in one way. You know, it was the reality of his existence that made me stop drinking and taking drugs. And I spent 4 years with him as a sober human being.
Connor died in a tragic accident in 1991. Clapton's reaction struck a global chord.
Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven?
The singer and guitarist Eric Clapton swept the board at the ceremony in Los Angeles for the Grammy Awards, the music world's equivalent of the Oscars. Clapton's 6 awards included Song of the Year for Tears in Heaven, which he wrote after the death of his 4-year-old son.
The one person I want to thank is my son for the love he gave me and the song he gave me. Thank you very much.
These days, when he's not making his annual pilgrimage to the Albert Hall, Eric Clapton is Dr. Rock. He's set up his own rehab clinic for recovering rockers who endure 5-star cordon bleu tough love on an exclusive Caribbean island.
I dreamed I had a good job and I got well paid.
And he's still hooking up with the Delta bluesman he idolized from a Surrey bedroom more than 4 decades ago.
In my opinion, he's #1 rock and roll player. And he played blues better than most of us. He's just a fantastic person.
Well, we've nearly finished our promenade among the plectrums. But before we reveal our #1, the roll call of River Armour.
It's easy for you to say, isn't it?
It wasn't.
No, well, was it?
Strangeways, there he went, Johnny Marr at 10. Moody Metal from Richie at 9. It's so unfair. Carlos is on the planet of the Aids. At 7, it's Dave Evans from the U2. Windmill Theatre from Townsend at 6. Hair Today, Hair Tomorrow, Brian May at 5. I Want Your Specs, Hank at 4. 4, look at the necks on that, Page, 3. And a slow hand for Eric at 2.
And so, to the greatest guitar hero of them all, the Emperor of the Axe, the 6-string Supremo,
The ultimate fender bender.
so brilliant he played his guitar upside down.
And then he set fire to it.
All aboard, the night train now boarding, and you have the best seat in the house reserved for you.
This is the earliest known footage of the ultimate guitar hero, who back in 1962 was an ex-paratrooper turned struggling session guitarist, relying on handouts from his employers.
My brothers tracked him down, pawned his guitar out the pawn shop, bought him strings, then he strung his guitar up and started playing, and hired him within 2 minutes.
He was playing the little pickup band. It was one of these coffee bar things that they have in Greenwich Village where you get like sort of $15 to do a spot. You just sat there and thought to yourself, well, this is ridiculous. Why isn't somebody signed this guy up? How come he's loose, you know?
He wasn't for long. Chaz signed Jimmy up and took him to London, where he made a swift impression.
Plug your ears! What's up for your ears?
There's the legendary story of Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, and I think it was Pete Townsend, maybe Clapton, coming to see Hendrix in '67 at a club in London. And up until that time, the debate had been raging about which one of these guys was, you know, the kingpin of this sort of British electric guitar circuit. And they walked into this club and saw Hendrix up on stage playing. Aside from jaws dropping, that was the argument was finished for all time.
I've played with other bands, a lot of other guitar players who've attempted to play like Hendrix, but no one can touch it.
It was the blues tradition amplified and pumped up times 10. So, you know, it was inevitable that he'd have the influence he did have. There was nothing else like him. And it had to happen in Britain. because America would have ignored them.
He struck me as being fabulous looking. He was extremely slim. He had the perfect rock star body. You know, he was quite broad in the shoulder, very narrow in the waist and hip, and quite a big head, and that's the formula. You need that, really, I think, to make it as a rock star. He certainly did.
And he started the song, and within seconds, he just, forget this, you know. It was live, so it was like, what the is going on here? His dressing room door was open, and he said, Lou, I hope, you know, that wasn't... He was, like, apologizing. I said, forget it, it was fabulous.
It's worth pointing someone who doesn't have experience of Hendrix to that live version of the Star Spangled Banner that he played at Woodstock. It's one of the most powerful pieces of music ever performed on the electric guitar.
At a time of race riots and the Vietnam War.
He loves his country. He sees what's going on. And how else can he make a statement other than taking the national anthem and really burning something into it that is his own?
Here come the hippies, the advance guard of an invasion force expected to number between 100,000 and 200,000 from all over Britain and the continent.
In fact, 600,000 turned up to see the British Woodstock and take one last drag on the fag end of peace, love and understanding.
The man with the guitar, Jimi Hendrix.
When Hendrix hit the stage, it was 2 in the morning.
Yeah!
I found myself sleeping when he came on, but we woke up pretty quickly.
I was so used to seeing him be magic, and at the Alouette he was garbage. He didn't want to play there, and you could really feel it, you could really tell, you know. And he was pissed off with the crowd because they wanted to hear the old stuff, which was a curious blindness there, as he didn't understand that.
Thank you very much, and please remember this.
18 days later, Jimi Hendrix was dead, choking on his own vomit after an evening of excess too far.
Earlier that year, General de Gaulle had died, and the school had flown the flag at half-mast. And I wrote a letter to the head, asking for the same respect to be accorded to our hero. The next school assembly, the head teacher came out in front of the whole school and said in very bald terms that no way would this happen. This would be the thin end of the wedge. The next time it would be because somebody's hamster died. He tried to make a laughing stock of me and my friends, but nobody laughed.
I reckon he was an alien. And you watch him on the TV and it's not possible to do what he does.
Jimmy was a legend in his lifetime. Didn't have to wait to die, you know, before people started to really appreciate him.
There'll never be another like him. He was a one-off. He changed the way people played. He changed the way everybody looked at electric guitar.
Jimmy's body now lies in his native Seattle, where 30 years after his death, there will soon be a memorial to the ultimate guitar hero.
So that's all, folks. The end of our Electric Avenue of acts.
Yes, we've had the brightest stars in the solo system, and we're all strummed out. I only hope we struck a chord.
And remember, you're in sinners.
La, 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and...
Tune in next Saturday for Top 10 X-rated, a sneak previews coming up. Now, the Channel 4 book Top 10, The Irreverent Guide to Music, will be available on the 1st of March, price £10. You can pre-order your copy from the Channel 4 shop with free delivery on 0870 123 4344 or click onto channel4.com/shop. And next tonight on 4, the Manic Street Preachers make rock history, playing to thousands in Castro's Cuba.